Welcome to Fireside Chat. My name is Sai. Let's talk about Coast Fire. This is also known as coasting to financial independence and retire early. Now, I think this should be called Coast Fi and not Fire because this strategy is to save and invest enough money early enough in life so you can retire at the traditional retirement age. Retiring early to me means that it's happening sooner than the normal retirement age at age 62. I'm also going to break down the pros and cons of Coast Fire and compare it to my Fat Fire strategy. You've probably heard or read about Lean Fire, Traditional Fire, and Fat Fire, but what is Coast Fire? Coast Fire is where you have enough contributions to your retirement accounts without making any further contributions. For example, if you need to spend $50,000 a year in retirement, you will need your net worth to grow to $1.25 million with 4% withdrawal rate. So you need to multiply $50,000 by 25, which gives you $1.25 million. I'm going to set the retirement age to 62 because that's when you're also eligible to claim Social Security retirement benefits. I'm also adding the annual average inflation rate of 3%. Let's say you're 30 years old and you decide to invest $30,000 every year with an 8% average annual return and 3% average inflation rate. So by year 12 or when you turn 41, you can stop investing because you're assuming the investment account would continue to grow on 5% average annual return for the remaining 21 years before you turn 62. When you turn 62, you're going to theoretically exceed your Coast Fi number at $1.38 million if the stock market performs on average annual return at 5% after the 3% inflation rate. Here are the variables you can't control: your age, stock market return, and the annual inflation rate. But you can control how much you invest every year. Contributing to your 401k at the maximum amount would put you at $20,500. Contribution to your IRA at the maximum amount would put you at $6,000, and if you have the HSA, you could contribute another $3,650 or $7,300 if you're on the family plan. So just by maxing out your 401k, IRA, and HSA would put you in the range of $30,150 to $33,800. If you start earlier and say you're 25 years old, you have the time on your side. However, as a 25-year-old, you might not be making as much money to contribute $30,000 a year. So I'm going to change that to $12,000 or $1,000 a month. Try to increase your contribution by $3,000 a year from ages 25 to 30. By the time you get to age 40 and stop investing, you will still exceed your FI number at age 62. Remember that when you're in your 20s, you have the time on your side. If you start late in your 40s, then you will need to either invest much more than $30,000 a year or investing longer years. If you're close to the normal retirement age, you might have to take a lot longer to get to your FI number. Either way, you can download this spreadsheet for free by visiting firesidechat.com/contact. Now let's take a look and see if I can use the Coast Fire strategy to achieve Fat Fire at age 62. Our Fat Fire number is $2.8 million or $100,000 a year with a 4% withdrawal rate. Let's assume that we have nothing saved. Between 401k, IRAs, and HSA, my wife and I are contributing $60,300 every year into our retirement accounts. I'm going to put a 5% annual rate of return after a 3% average inflation rate. I could theoretically stop investing in 17 years at age 51 to achieve Fat Fi of $2.8 million at age 62. So the idea of using the Coast Fire strategy is to get to a certain six-figure dollar amount so you can stop saving and investing money to coast into your 60s. To me, I just don't see myself stopping saving and investing at age 45 or 50 because the goal here is to exceed the $2.8 million mark. And I'm not worried as much about the retire early part, but hitting that financial independence number in 40s or 50s is a nicer feeling in my personal opinion. Let me go over the pros and cons of using the Coast Fire strategy. Pro number one is I can see this strategy as being more attainable and effective for people who can't achieve 50% savings rate. You could probably save $20,000 to $30,000 a year to get to the Coast Fi number in your 40s or 50s, but that obviously depends on your annual expenses during retirement and your current income. The con to this specific strategy is It would suck for people in their 40s and 50s who are just starting their FIRE journey. If you're in your 20s or 30s, then you will have a big advantage over the people in their 40s and 50s. Pro number 2 is you don't need a high income to get to your Coast FI. You won't have to be as aggressive as traditional or fat FIRE to get to that financial independence number. However, this is only if you're starting in your 20s or 30s. The problem with this strategy is that you're still working in your 40s and 50s until you reach your normal retirement age at 62. The whole idea of FIRE is to retire early from the workforce so you can enjoy doing something you love. This is why I'm having a hard time calling it a Coast FIRE, because it's not about retiring early and it's about retiring on time with money. Pro number 3 is you could achieve lean FIRE, traditional FIRE, and fat FIRE with the Coast FIRE strategy. The only problem I see is that when you stop investing and the market is on the downturn, then you lose the opportunity cost to see your portfolio rise higher in the future. And we're experiencing a market downturn this year so far. And let's say I hit the Coast FI number in 2022 at $450,000, because at age 62 in the year 2049, I would have pretty close to $1.8 million. Let's assume that in the year 2022, we have an overall return of negative 15% counting our high inflation. I would not want to miss out the opportunity to buy the dip in the bear market, because every dollar I invest today is at a discount for what I will produce 20 years from now. And obviously we can't predict what the stock market will do every year, but history shows us that there are more bull markets than bear markets over the last 60 or 70 years, maybe even 100 years. I also wouldn't want my portfolio to experience a lost decade. And what that means is that the market basically does nothing for 10 or more years. And take a look at the S&P 500 chart from August 2000 to January 2013. Let's say I stop investing in August 2000 because I reached my Coast FI number at $400,000. The S&P 500 in August 2000 peaked at 1,500 points. The market went down for the next 2.5 years due to the 9/11 attacks and the dot-com bubble. The S&P 500 bottomed at about 800 points. It took the stock market 7 years in May 2007 to get back to 1,500 points. And then guess what happened in 2008? The global recession happened, right? From there, it took another dip from late 2007 until it bottomed in March 2009 at 680 points. The S&P 500 didn't recover back to that 1,500 point mark until about January 2013. So basically, if I had stopped investing and saving at $400,000 in August 2000, my portfolio in the end of 2012 would have lost about $13,000, and that's not counting any dividend reinvestments. That's 13 years of almost no gains. That's scary to think your portfolio didn't grow anything for 13 years, right? So let's look at it from a different scenario. What if I consistently invested $30,000 a year from 2000 until 2012, and based on the actual S&P 500 historical returns, I would have had a total of $905,000, not counting the dividend reinvestments, because I would have bought a lot more index funds or stocks at a discount in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2008. That's what's also called a dollar cost averaging into the stock market. During the 13 years we didn't have any gains in the market, I would have had a negative 3% in total return if I didn't invest any more money into the stock market from 2000 to 2012. However, I would have made at least 7% average annual return by dollar cost averaging into the market over the course of 13 years. That's $65,000 in interest with $905,000 invested. And lastly, let's talk about how Coast FIRE could benefit you. If you're just starting to invest, I would look at Coast FIRE as the first step of the FIRE journey. When I look at the spectrum of personal wealth, Coast FIRE would likely be the first step of financial independence, followed by lean FIRE, traditional FIRE, and fat FIRE. If you're looking to retire at the traditional retirement age at 62, then Coast FI could be the right one for you, because you're sacrificing early on to be able to do more with your money later. Once you hit the Coast FI number, you could find a different job or a side gig that you've always enjoyed doing, And I would also recommend downloading my FIRE checklist from my website at firesidechat.com/contact. This is the easiest checklist to follow to grow your net worth. It's not a pyramid scheme and I'm not selling you anything. It is the easiest path to achieve your financial freedom. Just keep in mind that doing the Coast FI does come with some significant risks. It's not like lean FIRE or fat FIRE. You need to have some time on your side to coast into retirement. If you're just starting your FIRE journey in your late 30s, 40s, or 50s, then you might need to have a higher income and higher investment amount to achieve your Coast FI number before age 62. Also keep in mind that when you reach Coast FI, you can't retire because you're relying on the stock market performance. You never know how the stock market will perform in the next 10, 20, or 30 years until you reach your retirement age. If the market continues to dip like it has been, then you should really consider dollar cost averaging into your investment even after you hit the Coast FI number. Once you reach the Coast FI number, you still need a job to cover your cost of living because you're not retired yet. You're essentially betting on the market not to repeat what happened from 2000 to 2012 when the decade was lost. Personally, I am not doing Coast FI because this is not a retire early movement. As far as what index funds to invest in for FIRE, you should check out these two videos about index funds. So with that said, I appreciate you watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good one.